Peyton Manning is obviously the face of the Colts Mount Rushmore, but which other players joined him in all-time Colts glory? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. It's your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com, and I'm joined, as always, by Jake Arthur, our boots on the ground for the site as well. Now, we're taking a break this offseason from all the speculation on the current team and just talking about the current team. I feel like we have prepared you guys for training camp enough at this point, and we want to take one slight step back today and do more of a nostalgic type episode. So recently for the Locked On Podcast Network, we released our Mount Rushmore for the Indianapolis Colts. So throughout the Indianapolis Colts history, we personally only did Indianapolis. We'll get into more details on that later in the show. But for the Indianapolis Colts history, who the four best players are, or just who the four players would be on the Mount Rushmore for Indianapolis. And Jake and I agreed on Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and Dwight Freeney. So we're going to talk through those picks here, go on a little blast in the past, and Jake will really get into some of the nostalgia with it there, especially growing up being a fan of that, Jake. Then we'll talk about some players who just missed the cut, and then talk about some current players who have a chance to maybe get on this Mount Rushmore. Heck, I think the Colts have one, maybe two current, guys who are on pace for Hall of Fame careers currently on the roster. We'll talk about those guys in a minute. But first, Jake, again, our four selections: Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and Dwight Freeney. We don't have to spend much time on Peyton Manning, a top two quarterback to ever play the game. I think that was the easy decision there. But these other three picks, Jake, what kind of led to your thinking with Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and Dwight Freeney to round out your Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, it's funny. I think Mike Chappell said, when he was making the argument for Peyton Manning in the Hall of Fame, his argument simply was Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Look
at the numbers, look at the vibes. It kind of has all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. All the MVPs, all pros, Pro Bowl, every accolade he could achieve, he had it. So Peyton Manning, obviously. Marvin Harrison, you and I, we when we initially discussed this, we even talked about it even up to just going on air today. Marvin is, I feel, comfortably a top 10 wide receiver of all time. And I think he helped usher in that Peyton Manning era, certainly helped make Peyton's life a little easier, got there just a little before. So just a prolific player, had broken the single season receptions record at one point, 143. I remember that game against the Browns. So yeah, Marvin makes all the sense in the world. Reggie Wayne, obviously one of the most prolific receivers of all time as well. By the time he retired, he was up there, I believe, was in the top 10 of most categories by the time he retired, was one of the leaders in playoff receptions and yards and all that stuff as well. There's a lot of sentimentality when it comes to Reggie as well that I'll get to in just a moment. But Dwight Freeney also. So I think Reggie and Dwight Freeney were the ones that, I don't want to say pushback, but a lot of people gave their feedback as well on what they would do. And a lot of people are either, Freeney or Robert Mathis. And when it comes to Dwight Freeney, like we mentioned, Marvin Harrison is pretty comfortably a top 10 receiver of all time. I think Dwight Freeney was a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL pretty much throughout his tenure with the Colts. He was definitely a guy you had to game plan against week in and week out. I think a lot of people would tell you that the Colts win that Super Bowl against the Saints with a fully healthy Dwight Freeney. He just in the first half, he had that sack where he brought down Drew Brees with one arm and was pretty much toast by the second half. So Dwight Freeney, huge difference maker. That era, everyone talks about Freeney and Mathis, but Freeney was that guy. He had the patented spin move. He was the poster child of that defense. So for me, there are other guys you could argue for being on here, but I feel very good about these being our four.
Yeah, I will say for me, who doesn't really have the nostalgic feeling of it, this wasn't my team growing up. I grew up obviously admiring the Colts and really enjoying that Colts era of football. but I was kind of separated from the fandom of it. So when we got asked to do this exercise, Jake was obviously bringing analysis and the fan brain aspect of it, and I was bringing mostly just what I thought as a fan from afar. And for me, it wasn't even a debate that Harrison and Freeney were both going to be on this list. For me, two top 10 players of all time, respectively, at their position, in my opinion. I really had no qualms whatsoever of putting those guys on there. It was really easy for me to throw those two guys up there. The difficult part was the fourth guy. Who was going to be the fourth guy? You obviously have Reggie Wayne, Robert Mathis, and a couple other Hall of Famers from that era of Indianapolis Colts football. And we obviously wanted to include that Super Bowl run with all four of these guys because it was the one Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl that we really needed to include. And that era of Colts football was obviously the great era. So we ultimately agreed on Reggie Wayne. And I think part of it is just like, yes, we are doing this purely from player standpoint and a football standpoint. This has nothing to do with just the impact in the, off the field or as a coach. But Reggie Wayne, to me, just kind of gave off that air of like leadership and everything you were looking for from a person as well with the Colts, as well as being, a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver. He helped usher in the Andrew Luck era and then helped mentor T.Y. Hilton to being the third greatest receiver in Indianapolis Colts history behind those top two guys. And he was really a big part of passing that torch. In that 2012 season, I don't know if it's nearly as fun without Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne was fantastic that entire season, really the last huge season he had with the Colts. So it's like, to me, he barely got ahead of some other guys that we were considering. Great player, Hall of Fame caliber player for sure. And just an outstanding football player. But for me, yeah, these are four Hall of Famer guys. Like they're great players, but Reggie Wayne barely got on the list for me. The other three guys I think were pretty safe in my opinion.
So Reggie, I think, was my second after Peyton on here. I consider Reggie Mr. Colt, especially coming to now where he has been the receivers coach for a few years. He's a transplant from Miami, Florida, coming to the cornfields of Indiana back in 2001. Spent pretty much his whole career with the Colts up until he tried to give it a go in training camp with the Patriots that final season. But
we don't count that. I know there's pictures out there. I don't think they're real. It's Photoshop or AI. I'm pretty sure.
He did not make it to the regular season, so it does not count. But no, I mean, he's Mr. Colt. He's the franchise leader in games played. But this is sentimentality for me. And his career is kind of in two acts. So he seamlessly replaced Marvin Harrison as, the top receiver and made that not be such a burning wound once Marvin Harrison started to kind of peter out. And as you mentioned, he helped T.Y. Hilton become T.Y. Hilton essentially. But back in that, 2011, 2012 timeframe, both Reggie Wayne and Pierre Garcon were up for free agency, and Garcon was a young up-and-coming player. He got a lot of money from Washington, but that was a big blow. Like he was a big-time playmaker for the Colts with Peyton Manning, and like that was tough to see him go. And Reggie Wayne even admitted just recently after the passing of Jim Irsay, he was about to be out the door as well, about to get on a plane to go sign somewhere else in 2012 before Irsay got on the horn with him. And they worked it out, and the Colts don't experience that same level of magic in the early Andrew Luck era without Reggie Wayne. Right. You got the Chuck Pagano game, the Chuck Strong game against the Packers, the orange gloves. That's going to live on as an iconic moment in Colts history. But there's just so much about Reggie. I mentioned the playoff stats as well. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame at this point sucks. Again, like he is a guy who like, there are NFL films archives that like feature him. Like he is a part of NFL history. So to me, it's a no-brainer. And I think if you polled the vast majority of Colts fans in Indianapolis who like watch games in the RCA Dome in the early Lucas Oil Stadium days, I think Reggie is the second most popular Indianapolis Colts player behind Peyton Manning. And shoot, another one that just popped in mind I didn't think about, the 4th and 2 game. He caught the game-winning touchdown in that one as well. So, like Reggie Wayne's, like his carbon footprint on the Colts is there, like heavily. I don't think you can have a Mount Rushmore of the Indianapolis Colts without Reggie in it.
Yeah, and my taking away the fan brain, my analytic brain with this mainly went that era of Colts football was defined by the offense. And can you really tell the story of that Colts offense without Reggie Wayne? I don't think you can. Reggie Wayne was the third most important part of that offense. So that's why I ultimately agreed with Jake to put him on there. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about some of our notable exclusions. You guys have been throwing some in the comments here. You've been responding to us on socials about some of our notable exclusions. And also, we have to answer the question, what about the Baltimore guys? What about the Baltimore Colts? We're going to talk about all that here in just a second.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. My wife has had me do that for her countless times as well, for podcast appearances and just live events that are really, really popular, but you have to get in them pre-sale and wait in line with a bunch of other people. It is not fun. I don't enjoy it. Live music, concerts, and again, the live podcast, whatever it is, it should be about making memories and not dealing with all the stress of ticket shopping beforehand, because that doesn't even get into all of the stress of ticket shopping and all the hidden fees and all that stuff. But that's where Gametime comes in to clear it all up for you. They make getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal, then Gametime Zone Deals picks the best seats in your section for you. Plus, with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. There's none of those hidden, annoying fees that I was mentioning. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so let's talk about who hit the cutting room floor on this one. And Zach, for me, I'm going to mention four guys who I would not have been mad about them being mentioned in the four. And I think a lot of the feedback we've gotten has mentioned these guys specifically. So Edgerrin James and Robert Mathis are some of the big ones. I would put Jeff Saturday and Adam Vinatieri in there as well. I've also seen a lot of Bob Sanders, which I would entertain that too. I think that one comes with a big caveat, a big asterisk that we'll get to. But let's just start with you. Like, which of these was the toughest cuts for you?
For me, I think there was a tier of three players when it came down to that last spot. You know how I mentioned in the first segment that the Reggie Wayne spot was up for grabs for me. And really the only other players I considered for that were Edgerrin James and Robert Mathis. You know, it was kind of those three guys fighting for that final spot. And the tiebreaker for me, because I think you can kind of make the argument for all three of these guys that like all-time ranking, they're probably all around a similar tier in their respective positions, probably top 20-ish all time in their respective rankings. Very, very good players, but not like upper echelon, like, I mean, and they're going to be like, some of these guys are like Edgerrin James, I think is a Hall of Famer, Robert Mathis, Hall of Famer. Like, we're not talking down on them, but like that next level, like Marvin Harrison, Dwight Freeney, and Peyton Manning, that like top 10 all time at their position type players, they're kind of in that next tier. So Reggie Wayne won out for me, but it was tough cutting Robert Mathis, I think, from that, because he was such a darn good pass rusher. And, in my brain, I do think Dwight Freeney was the much better player. Maybe not by a ton, but like the better player between the two of them, especially when the Colts were at their highest peak. Dwight Freeney was the 1 and Robert Mathis was the 2. Even if it was a pretty close 1-2, I still think that's kind of how it broke down. They are very similar all-time in career sack numbers, but Freeney just has the more first-team All-Pros, the more just impact plays, in my opinion. So that's what kind of gave Freeney that nod there, and then I still went with Wayne because of the nostalgic vibe of that and just the era of offense there. But that was the toughest cut. Edgerrin James, the biggest reason why he got cut for me, and it's just tough to say this because when you're making these very difficult cuts, but like, the running back was the most replaceable part of that early Colts run. And this is not to say Edgerrin James is not a Hall of Fame player. Like, he is a fantastic, fantastic running back, one of the all-time greats at the position. But that Colts offense early in the, in the 2000s, they were able to supplant him with Joseph Adai and Dominique Rhodes. And heck, they won the Super Bowl without him. A very heartbreaking thing. They won the Super Bowl without him, but it just didn't feel right for an Indianapolis Colts Mount Rushmore to put a guy on there who didn't win the Super Bowl with that era, So Very, very difficult cut. I think Edgerrin James is a fantastic player all time. And if the Mount Rushmore had 6 heads, those would be the 2 guys I would throw on there. Jeff Saturday and Adam Vinatieri, great players. But I think I'd have Bob Sanders over both of them as well. The short peak was just so good of Bob Sanders that I think I would have Bob Sanders over both of those guys personally. Adam Vinatieri wouldn't be in my top 600, but that's just me personally as a hater of it's a kicker. It's not a real thing. But that's how I would break it down personally. I think if I really had to rank them through 6, it would be Mathis at 5 and Edgerrin James at 6 is the way I would have it. I don't know. Would you be the same, Jake, or a little bit different there?
No, I think Edge would probably be my next one in there. Now, again, there's arguments for why he didn't make it, of course. Like, the season he tore his ACL, I think in 2001, Dominic Rhodes came in and ran for over 1,000. He missed a couple games the next year, and that's when James Mungro came on the map and did some nice things. Edgerrin was a very special player, and I think everyone who watches this show by now was probably around, to watch when Ezekiel Elliott came into the league. Edgerrin was Zeke before Zeke, and not just because they both led the NFL in rushing each of their first 2 years, but both players, right out of the bat, were immaculate triple threat players as runners, pass catchers, and in pass protection. Edgerrin was a true 3-down, never had to leave the field type of player. Very special running back, no doubt. But as we've seen throughout NFL history, or I guess since the 2000s, really, no matter how special a running back is, they're not usually the reason for or why a team won or lost. They're an awesome icing on top. And I do think if Edgerrin was still with the Colts in 2006, they still would have won the Super Bowl.
Right.
But they won it without him there also.
Right.
And that's not to downgrade him whatsoever. There are just tiebreakers for me in this. But then, of course, Robert Mathis, for a lot of the same reasons I really appreciated Reggie Wayne. You could say the same for Robert Mathis. He also, for the defense, was that last taste of that era, because Robert Mathis played until 2015 or something as well. I think him and Reggie went out right around the same time. He had a huge final season. He had one of his final seasons was really big up until he had that I forget what injury it was. He had
I think it was a torn ACL or torn Achilles or something.
Achilles, yeah.
Achilles, yeah.
I think he played one more year after that. But he was, again, that last taste of that era of Colts football, and he still played at a relatively high level going out of it until the injury. He came back to coach a little bit with the Colts as well because he wanted to be a part of the franchise, so that was a big deal. Jeff Saturday is another guy, obviously answered, his coaching tenure
came back to coach.
He did too, yeah. His coaching tenure did not go well, and it was pretty toxic, but he did it. He said yes, he came back. But Jeff Saturday was a huge fan favorite up until that, and he was one of the only players that people would have accepted coming in to be the interim coach. It was a joke no matter what, but Jeff Saturday was probably the least of all the evils there. I said it at the time, was this was putting a pretty beloved face on an awful situation. And that's what it was. But no, Jeff Saturday was a big deal here. Adam Vinatieri, obviously a lot of big moments. It meant something that he went from the Patriots, who I don't think there is any opposing fan base here in Indiana-based sports that's been hated more than the Patriots during that Tom Brady era. So for Vinatieri to come from the Patriots and come to the Colts, played with the Colts longer, won a Super Bowl with the Colts, got to a second one, but the Colts lost that Super Bowl. He wasn't in it. He was injured that year. Matt Stover was the kicker. But no, he was a big deal. And then I'll throw Dallas Clark in the mix as well. But he was always a top 5 to 10 tight end when he was in the NFL. Bob Sanders, that's a tough one. I do think if Bob would have had a couple more healthy seasons, no question.
Yeah. Because
there are guys who, again, have that footprint on NFL history. You think of Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, those insane safeties, Sean Taylor, those insane safeties of that era. Bob Sanders was comfortably in that group, if not for all those injuries. Even won Defensive Player of the year after the Colts won the Super Bowl because he at Super Bowl run, he wasn't healthy like until the playoffs, but he was healthy the entire next year and won Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. So
Yeah.
health was the only issue for Bob.
Yeah, and I will say this as a person who grew up as a Washington fan, Bob Sanders, much, much better than Sean Taylor ever got to be in the NFL.
Okay.
Like, Sean Taylor was awesome, but
Mhm.
as someone who watched both in their prime as a kid, wasn't even close. Bob Sanders was an all-world. Bob Sanders won a Defensive Player of the Year over the Palomalos and the Ed Reeds of the world. Like, he was pretty great. Real quick, though, Jake, we're running long on this segment, but I did want to answer the question. No Baltimore Colts players. I mostly left that up to you because you're the Indy native, but for me personally, I viewed them as Baltimore Ravens past players. I don't view them as Baltimore Colts, even though they say they have the same, like, Colts in there, but I view them as Baltimore franchise players. That's why I left them off. I would have gladly put Unitas in here if we considered him with this, but I left it up to you, and you wanted just Indianapolis Colts guys. Why was your reasoning for that?
Yeah, so number one, I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room. You and I are both young enough to not be able to speak accurately about Johnny Unitas, Gino Marchetti, Raymond Berry, Lenny Moore, those guys. I do not want to downplay their effect on NFL history, but I can't tell you about them.
Right.
I can name off their stats and accomplishments, but I didn't watch them play. Plus, Colts franchise history is so saturated in two eras, all the way back then with Baltimore and then all the way in the Peyton Manning era. It's just nothing but the upside down and awfulness in between, essentially. So the Baltimore Colts deserve their own Rushmore because they're
fair.
loaded with Hall of Famers too, just like this era is. So it's very hard within four faces to do it with those two eras. Otherwise, obviously, Johnny Unitas is probably in there, probably Gino Marchetti because he's one of the best pass rushers of that era ever too. So like, yes, there are ones deserving of it, but it's such a huge conversation that it's hard to do that. And again, I think they deserve each their own Mount Rushmores.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. I totally agree with that. And I wanted to leave it up to you again because you have the more like not bias, but just the more knowledge in that area with that stuff. But coming up, guys, we're going to bring it back to the current Colts. Are there any current Colts players that have a chance to making this Mount Rushmore in the future, or at least like a top 10 list, like going forward? Like, do we have any current Colts players that have a chance at that? We'll get to that here in just a second. Alrighty, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we are back talking about the Colts Mount Rushmore that we did for the Locked On Podcast Network. We talked about our picks, we gave our reasoning, and we talked about players that just missed the cut. But what about current players that could have a chance at this in the future, or maybe not a chance at this list because Mount Rushmore is just tough, but like let's say like a top 10 list or like an all-time list of like Colts players, all-time like the best at every position. What current Colts players have a chance at this? And I think you're looking at two guys who are on a Hall of Fame path right now in Quentin Nelson and honestly still Jonathan Taylor, in my opinion, are on that Hall of Fame path. And I think they're guys who would be worthy of consideration. I mean, you look at Quentin Nelson, what is it? Besides Peyton Manning, he's like up there with like Peyton and Gino Marchetti, and then it's like Quentin Nelson for like all pros in franchise history. Like, I think he has the same amount of all pros as Dwight Freeney had in his career. And he just turned 30, or he's just under 30 years old.
He's made the Pro Bowl every year.
Yeah. So Quentin Nelson is on pace to being a top 10 guard to ever play the sport. He's currently in his prime playing with the Colts. And even if he's like taken a slight step back from what he was in 2018, 2019, he's still consistently a top 2 to 3 guard in the sport. One of the best players in football. And then Jonathan Taylor, again, we talk so highly about Edgerrin James. We talk so highly about guys like Joseph Adai and Marshall Faulk before that. When Jonathan Taylor's career is over, as long as he can stay healthy these next couple of years, his numbers are going to look very similar to those guys. And he'll have, the first team All Pros. He'll have the Pro Bowl nods. Like, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have, as long as he gets some success in there, is going to have one of those like fringe Hall of Fame careers as well. So I think those are the two guys that immediately stood out to me, Jake.
Yeah, I think so too. So with Quentin, I think he would have a good argument for the Mount Rushmore. Easily at this point already would be top 10 Colt. The problem all these guys have is no postseason success. That's the biggest ding on them so far. Like, now the next few years could play out a certain way, But yeah, Quentin, I think regardless is probably going to end up there. Jonathan Taylor, again, unless he just hits a wall, he's going to finish as the Colts like second all-time leader in all rushing stats behind Edgerrin, basically. And he right now, this doesn't get talked about enough. In NFL history, he is number 5 all-time in rushing yards per game. It's behind like Jim Brown and Eric Dickerson. Like we're talking blue blood running backs, like classic running backs. Jonathan Taylor's 5th all-time. So I mean, if he can stay relatively healthy, at least how he was last year, then within another couple, 2-3 more seasons, I think he's right there. DeForest Buckner, Matt Heat fan mentioned that here. I think he's the best defensive tackle of the Indianapolis era. Again, if you go back to the Baltimore days, there's probably some other arguments, but like the Colts don't have a rich history at like cornerback or defensive tackle. And DeForest Buckner has been, probably the most meaningful defensive tackle they've had, which brings me then when I mentioned cornerback, Kenny Moore. Again, he's probably a top 3, if not the best corner they've ever had, his career. And he's still got some in the tank, so I think you could do that. I've got a watch list as well. Some young players who I don't think qualify yet. They just haven't been around long enough. But like if their career keeps on this trajectory, you could make a good argument. So Tyler Warren obviously is a real.
Don't crown him so early, Jake. Jeez, man.
Well, listen though, if he turns out to be what he's advertised, then like he'll probably be a perennial top 5 tight end in the NFL throughout his career.
I hope so. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So again, this is a watch list. These guys haven't accomplished enough yet. So Tyler Warren is a young guy. Bernard Ryman. There's not, when you're looking at left tackle success, a lot of people will, there's like Chris Hinton, I think, but like Anthony Costanzo is really behind Tarek Glenn. It's not a rich history of offensive tackles for the most part. You got like Adam Meadows as well at right tackle. Josh Downs, I think he's gotten off to a really fast start to his career. If you look at guys and like what they've accomplished through their first 2 years, he's actually really high up there. Now, again, it's just been 2 years, so it's a watch list. Okay,
it's definitely a watch list, Jake. It's definitely a watch list.
I want to highlight some of the young talent because there's a feeling out there the Colts don't have a lot of good young talent. The Colts drafted Laiatu Latu to be the next Freeney, Mathis, Latu. That was their vision for him. And then I'll throw a curveball at you here. Nick Cross.
He needs to make the jump that I want him to make this next season. But, I think Nick Cross is off to he's still so young. He's 22, 23.
I think when safeties are big-time playmakers, they are such a highlight-worthy type of player across the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, think of how many players just since we've grown up and like now as adults watch, like probably so many of your favorite NFL highlights are from safeties. Like I know mine are. Like I love the Ed Reeds and the Sean Taylors and the Bob Sanders and everything. Not to say he's going to be that, but like he can make big plays. He gets interceptions. He makes plays in deep in the secondary, in the backfield. So like if he keeps getting better and better and better, because like he's a guy who's gotten better each year. So like he's still an ascending player. Then I think watch out for Nick Cross.
Oh, I dude, if one of these guys can live up to that expectation, Jake, then I am just over the moon with these guys right here. So I hope one of those guys can get there. I did want to touch on DeForest Buckner and Kenny Moore real quick. Buckner, completely agree with you. I think he is the best defensive tackle in the history of the Indianapolis Colts. I can't speak to the Baltimore Colts again. Right. I'm sure there's somebody back there that was better.
I feel like Marchetti was a defensive tackle maybe. But again, that's why we can't talk about the Baltimore days because we don't know enough.
Right. You guys can yell at us for being too young in the comments there. But DeForest Buckner, for me, like his biggest competition is Booger McFarland, probably. And DeForest Buckner has been an all-pro. Like Monte
Rager and Ellis Johnson.
Marcus Hunt, baby. Like he's competing with Marcus Hunt here. Like it's a pretty good list for DeForest Buckner. So I'm with you there. Kenny Moore, the one thing I really wanted to shout out with Kenny here, though, is we talk about the lack of playoff success for the Colts under Chris Ballard in this era of Indianapolis Colts. But when we go back to their one real playoff run in 2018 where they got to the second round, Kenny Moore finished that playoffs with like 3 sacks and an interception in 2 games.
He was there, yeah.
He was a big time performer in the playoffs. Now, again, it would have meant more if it amounted to much more than just a second round exit. But look, get this guy in the playoffs. He produces in the playoffs, like of an era where nobody really produced in the playoffs. Kenny Moore certainly produced in one of his few chances he got. So, I think Kenny Moore is going to go down favorably in Indianapolis Colts history. DeForest Buckner as well. Jonathan Taylor at the worst will go down favorably in Colts history. But Quentin Nelson, he's an all-time great already.
There.
Like if he retired right now, he'd be on the Hall of Fame track. But when you consider where he's going to be at like age 35, like he'll have one of the best resumes for the Hall of Fame out, even if he doesn't get the team success, because who looks at team success really for guards and stuff like that. So fantastic player. One more guy I need to throw in here just because he kind of is he's gonna lump into the Bob Sanders mold of it by the end of his by the end of it all. I can't even say by the end of his career because his career is over now. But Shaquille Leonard, man, like the pace he was on. The pace he was, I know that like he kind of lumps into the current generation of players, but not like the current players. But like, man, that pace he was on was like to be one of the greatest linebackers to ever play the sport. And now he's just another Bob Sanders, which is great still. Like another Bob Sanders is still such a great compliment, but like it does kind of suck. That's what his career amounted to, is like another what if instead of like oh my gosh, this is what he was, you know?
Yeah, Shaq and Andrew Luck are kind of starting their own what if Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, we got to do that next. Andrew Luck, Bob Sanders, we got Shaq Leonard.
Yeah.
Do we just have to throw Jack Muhort in just for the joke of it? Because we all thought he was going to be so good. Malik Hooker, not Malik Hooker, but
Hooker, maybe.
Yeah, man. So many what ifs with the Colts. What if Edgerrin James stuck around for another year? What if Marshall Faulk never left? Like, there's a lot of what ifs.
What if? Well, they had to trade Marshall Faulk to get Edge, but what about Joseph Adai never getting a neck injury?
Yeah.
Because Joseph Adai was a really good two-way player.
That's true. So many questions with this Colts team, but that's all we have for today. We're running out of time for today's episode, guys. We want to thank you though. For making us your first listen today and every day. The Locked On NFL Top 100 will be released on Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL host of Locked On, and there are some stunners on that list. Don't miss where your favorite players are ranked. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. If you want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, and follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, all on socials. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.